Hi, my name is Jasmine and I'm from the Moore Park College Writing Center. Today I'm going to share with you how to make an appointment as well as some of the APA basics. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And then if you start out at the Moore Park College homepage and you go over to the right where it says menu, click on that and a bar will pop up to the right of the page. Scroll down until you get to students. Click that and then scroll down again until you get to tutoring. This will take you to the Teaching and Learning Center homepage where you can find all of our great resources. For example, if you need help with math and science, you would just use this box to the right to click the Math and Science Center, and you could find out all the information you needed there. Or if you needed help with a language or tutoring for Spanish, for example, you would go to our Language Tutoring Center. But we're going to talk about the Writing Center today and how to make an appointment with us. So if you click the Writing Center back in that box to the right, this will take you to the Moore Park College Writing Center's homepage. So there's a lot of really good information on this page, including handouts, events coming up. You can meet the tutors and kind of look at their bio to see who's a good fit with you. We also have a link to online tutoring here. But let's just start with making an appointment. So you're going to want to scroll down to below that first picture, and it'll say make an appointment to the left. Go ahead and click that, and that will take you to a new page. And then once again, you want to click visit our scheduling site. So when you do that, a box will pop up with available dates and times to work with a tutor. So you're going to select the date and time that works best for you. It'll tell you which tutor's available, and then you're going to click next and follow the prompt until you get to the end, and you'll know you've successfully scheduled an appointment when you get a confirmation email. If you've never made an appointment before, there will be the need to make an account. It's super easy. You just click new user up here at the top, make a login, and then you're good to go. So we're doing tutoring via Zoom. So you'll receive an email with a Zoom link for your tutor. You'll use that link when it's your appointment time, and you'll get 45-minute Zoom session with your tutor. So one-on-one tutoring still for 45 minutes is just online. But if you can't make a Zoom appointment, we also have email tutoring. So you would use this email here, mcwritingcenter@bccd.edu, and you would send your paper with the below information. All of this is also available on the website for your reference. And you would get feedback within 2 days, and you're allowed that one time per paper. For our online Zoom tutoring, you can make up to 2 appointments per week, and you can work with that tutor individually, one-on-one, live in real time. So now let's get into APA 7th edition. So there are many parts to an APA paper. Today we're just going to cover the title page, the body of work, which includes in-text citations and headings, as well as the reference page. So let's start with the title page. The first thing that I want to share with you guys is that at the top, sorry about that, you're going to want to start with your page number. This will be on every page within your paper. So you're going to keep that running page number in the top right corner. If you were used to APA 6th edition, or if you'd ever seen an APA 6th edition paper, there used to be a running head in the left. APA 7th edition got rid of that for student papers, so you no longer need to include a running head. So no running head, just the page number in the top right corner. Everything in APA is double-spaced, and there's appropriate fonts, which includes Times New Roman, Calibri. There's a whole list of appropriate fonts, but really stick to those two. They're kind of the best overall. And you're going to want to go ahead and put your title 3 to 4 lines from the top of the page. It should be center and boldface with case title, so that just means using uppercase letters when appropriate in each word. Then you're going to want to include 1 extra blank double space before you get to your name. So it goes title and then extra double space, your name, the affiliation, which would be like Department of Psychology, Moore Park College. It's just kind of your department as well as school. And then the specific class. So you would include your CRN or whatever the class is, for example, Psych MO2, and then what the title is. So clinical psychology or abnormal psychology, research methods, whatever your psych class is. And then your professor name, as well as the date the assignment is due. So not the date you wrote the paper or the date that you finished it, but the date the assignment is due. So to recap, double space, only your titles in bold here, and keep that page number started at the top right corner. So APA papers can take many formats, and it depends on what you're writing them about. So for a research methods paper, maybe you're analyzing something that requires you to look at the methods with experimental design, the results and discussion. So you have all these different sections for that. For a general research paper or a literature review, you may have one topic that you're looking at and you'll have subtopics between that. Maybe you'll include findings. But whatever the paper is, APA uses headings to separate out each chunk. So let's review headings real quick. So this, you can always reference the source to check back if you're unsure, but I'm just going to go to a level 3 heading. It does go past here, but most papers, especially starting out, will not go past level 3 heading. So for example, a level 1 heading would be your title or conclusion or main section of your paper. Like if you had methods and you're going to have several paragraphs on methods, you would have that title, methods, or the title of your paper, center, bold, and in title case heading. So again, appropriate uppercase when the word needs it. So after that, if you have sections within that, you're going to want to use a flush left bold title case heading. So that would be something like if you had I have an example here. The psychological effects of COVID is like the big box. And within that, you have the idea of feeling isolated and family care. So those would be the two that would be flush left bold. But maybe within feeling isolated, you have several subsections, like feeling isolated in children or feeling isolated in adults. We would use a level 3 heading for that, which is flush left, bold, italics, and title case. So don't make this too complicated. Just think of it in terms of this is a topic. These are topics within it. Here's my next topic. These are topics within it. For papers just starting off, you may only have a level 1 heading or maybe go to a level 2 heading. So don't worry about listing everything out or every subtopic out. It should really just be the main boxes and how they fit together. So let's just see what this looks like in a paper. So this is from the APA 7th edition manual. And their section, so their main section was progressive muscle relaxation. So that's a level 1 heading because there's a bunch of information on that. Within that, they used a level 2 heading of features of progressive muscle relaxation, as well as progressive muscle relaxation and group psychotherapy. So you can see here when there's one section, but both of these fit under it, and there's maybe several paragraphs on each section, it's nice to give us that heading to keep the reader organized and know what you're talking about. This can also be really useful if you're given a rubric with required sections. Go ahead and use those required sections as your heading. Not only does it keep you on track, but it shows your professor where to find that information. So that's kind of like a good thing to think about as well for level headings and what you need to include. Let's talk about citations and in-text citations specifically. So you're going to want to cite any information that does not come from your own brain, that you did not think of yourself, or that's not common knowledge, like who the president is. So we're going to want to think about anything that we're paraphrasing, that we're directly quoting, if we're referring to data or a table or anything we've seen or a long passage we read, even something that came from class. That's all information that we gained from somewhere else, so we need to cite it. So in-text citations always have two main parts, the author and the year. The year is very important in APA, and the author, we're always going to refer to them by their last name. Page numbers are only required for direct quotations, so that's when we'll get into that in just a second. For in-text citations, there's two types. There's a narrative citation, which just means you gave the author's name and the year in your actual sentence in words. Or there's a parenthetical citation, which means you gave us all the information, and then in parentheses at the end before the period or the punctuation, you gave us that author and the year. So I'm going to walk you through that and show you some examples. But first, I just want to show you in general what the information looks like when you have one or more authors or maybe a group, and what your parenthetical and narrative citation would look like. And then I'll show you the examples of that in a text. So for one author, you're always going to want to use their last name. And then for a parenthetical citation, it's a comma followed by the year. And this goes in parentheses. That's why it's called a parenthetical citation at the end of your sentence before your punctuation. The narrative citation, you would be using this in words. So it'd be something like Smith, and then you would give the date in parentheses immediately next to the author, explains how blah, blah, blah. So you see how that's built into the narrative. So for two authors, in your parenthetical citation, you actually use the and sign. versus in the narrative citation, you would just say the author and the other author. If there's 3 or more authors for your in-text citation, starting out with your very first citation, you get to use et al. So you just give that first author listed, their last name, and then you would use et al. So it's always all with a period. So that can kind of look weird in your parenthetical citation because it's the author's last name, et al, period, comma, but that's the proper format. And then the date, or in your narrative citation, you would be saying something like Taylor et al, 2018, explains how, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes for groups, they don't list an author, or it just says it comes from the American Heart Association or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So in this instance, when it's a major organization, you use them to stand as the author. So if it's the National Institute of Mental Health and there's no author given on maybe a journal article you found, you'll use them to stand as the author. The first time you use them, whether that's in a narrative citation or a parenthetical citation, you're going to want to list out the whole name. Then you give the abbreviation, and from then on, you can use just that abbreviation. So here, because it's already in parentheses, you bracket NIMH, so National Institute of Mental Health, bracket NIMH, that just indicates that's what I'm going to use in the future, and the date. Or if it's in the narrative citation, you would say National Institute of Mental Health, and then in parentheses, you would give NIMH. So now in subsequent citations, I'm not writing out the whole thing. So let's see what that looks like in the actual example from the publication manual. Here in their first citation, they use a parenthetical citation and they use an instance of having an organization as the author. So American Psychological Association, comma, and the date. And again, look at how that goes before the punctuation. Their next citation example is again a parenthetical citation, but it uses the and because there's 2 authors. And the last one I want to draw your attention to is a single author as a parenthetical citation. So you have the whole sentence as you can see, and then you just have the author's last name and the year. Narrative citations you can build in and work around your work kind of to use transitions, and they're also really good practice the first time you're using a source. They also give you the freedom to give a little bit more background. So maybe you want to share the title because it's really important, or the research design that was used, or anything else. So in a narrative citation, I have an example of In Chronic Pain, Where the Body Meets the Brain, which is the title by Crawford with the date. She notes that. So say I took all of that to introduce the source, but then I kind of flow into my work. I can also just use Crawford 2015 explains how pain is blah, blah, blah. So narrative citation, you're just working it into your actual essay, into your words. But remember to always keep that year next to the author's last name. So here's an example from the sample paper where they have Lang, 1982, underscored 2 such benefits, blah, 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 blah. So it just works right in. For quotations, you're going to do everything you just learned for a narrative citation or parenthetical citation, but you're going to add the page number. So you can do this in one of 2 ways. You can either still have that narrative citation of the author up front, and then you'll have your information in your quote. And then once your quote ends, you'll have that parentheses with a P, period, and the number, the page that it was found on, parentheses, punctuation. So we don't put it inside the quote. We don't put the punctuation first and then the citation and then another period. We're going to want to use that quotation and then come with our parenthetical citation there. Or you can just put all of the information together in one parenthetical citation. So you can have your quote, and then you can have the author's last name, comma, the year, comma, and the P, period, and whatever page number you found it on. Not everything will have a page number, particularly if you're using websites. So we want to look to some way to identify to the reader, hey, this is where I got this quote. So one way to do that is to find the paragraph number. So you'd actually count down on a web page and be like, okay, it's paragraph 9. And we would use para, P-A-R-A, period, 9 instead of the P, period, 1. Or if your quote spans multiple pages, you would use PP, period, 1 through 2. Another way to kind of identify maybe for a website is to actually just use the section title, because if it's too long or you don't want to count the paragraphs and there's no page number, you can use the section title. But for direct quotations, we want to give the reader the way to find that information directly. So now let's talk about a reference page. So your reference page should always have every source that you used in your paper and you cited should be on your reference page. And your reference page should also always match. So the first word of your reference page should be whatever your author is or your affiliation, whatever you're using as that first step for your citation. So let's look at some more rules. You're going to want to label this references, centered and bolded, and you're going to want to continue that page number in the top right corner. It'll still be double spaced, but when a reference is longer than one line, you use a 1/2 inch hanging indent. And that sounds kind of weird, so I'm going to show you an example in just a second. But then lastly, you'll want to remember to alphabetize all of your entries. So let's look at this example. Notice they've continued page 10 at the top. They have references centered and bold, and then they have all of their entries in alphabetical order. And then notice here how they have, since this citation goes past one line, they have this hanging indent. So anytime a citation passes one line, it goes instead of from a 1 inch margin to the 1.5 inch margin. Let's look specifically how to do certain citations. So these are just common ones. You may have to look up others or get some help because it's not just natural knowledge to know how to cite and how to build a reference page. But you always want to start with that author's last name, comma, first initial or first and middle initial, depending on what they give you, then the date in parentheses. And then here's something to really pay attention to in APA. The title is given with lower cases after the first word. So with the exception if it's a 2-part title and there's a colon, the first word after the colon will also be in italics, or any words that are proper nouns that should be capitalized, America, things like that, those will be capitalized. But everything else is in lowercase after the first word. Then you want to use where you, either the journal or the publisher, so that's where it, next you're going to want to include that. So this was from Scribber, so that was a publisher, and that's in italics. And then anything like the page number or the edition, that comes next after that, followed by the DOI formatted as a URL. So either the DOI or just the standard like web link, you're always going to want to format that in APA 7th edition as a URL. So this is for an online journal. Here's for a book. The only difference I want to point out is that since a book is a long work, you want to italicize it and you want to include the edition and then where it was, where the publishing location was. So if you have 2 authors, you're going to want to list them out and then separate them with the and symbol. You're going to have to list out all of the authors up to 21 authors. So you can't use et al. Here until you're past 21 authors. So let's hope you don't have to do that. But you're also going to want to do last name, comma, first initial, or first and middle initial if they've included that, and separate all of that out until you get to the last one where you use the and symbol. So it's a lot of work if you have a lot of authors, but it's just part of what you have to do. And this is a website, so they don't have a publishing location, so it just has the retrieve from with the actual URL. So the library database is where you'll probably be finding many of your sources because you know that it's credible, good stuff. And they do have some citation tools for you that you can use to help you along the way. So if you look at the tools to the right, it'll say cite, or sometimes on the first page that you click, there will be somewhere that says cite. Go ahead and click that, and usually a list of all the available citations will open up. But I want you to start looking through this and seeing if you notice anything that should be different, because there's a couple things I want to point out. The APA 7th edition is rather new, so a lot of the citations are still in 6th edition, and you have to check if there's any changes or differences. Also, citation generators are not perfect. For example, who caught that the title was in all uppercase? So that's something that would need to be fixed for your final reference page. So use a citation generator, use another generator that you like, but always check your work. The biggest thing that I see is sometimes they have the date in a funny location, like they'll have the date next to like the page numbers, or they'll have the last name and the whole first name written out, or the title is in all capitals, or they don't italicize the publisher. So those are kind of the top things to look out for, as well as those little punctuation differences. But it's a good thing to get kind of all your information together and then go back and give it that check. So for formatting, and these are tips for Word, so I'm sorry Mac people, I'm not very Mac savvy, but if you have Microsoft Word, here would be how you format your reference page to get that 1.5 inch hanging indent. Go ahead and go to View and click Ruler, and then this ruler will pop up. So you'll want to select the lines that you want tabbed over, And normally this little doodad over here is lined up with this one and it kind of looks like an hourglass. You have to very carefully pull it over till you get to that 1/2 inch indent. So that's kind of a way, like I used to spend time like enter, tab, no, that didn't work. So this is kind of like a little formatting help to hopefully make your reference page be a little bit easier. There's also a ton of available resources online. You also have to make sure that's a credible, good source. So here I've listed some available resources for you to check out. There's the apastyle.apa.org, and this takes a lot of information from the actual publication manual. There's also Purdue OWL, which has a ton of information on citations for both APA, MLA, Chicago, whatever you could look for. And Scribr, which is where I actually got how to do those citations. Scribr is a great source, and they also have a citation generator. But like I said, if you're going to use a generator, always make sure that you're checking to make sure that it's actually being appropriately generated. So hopefully, though, we'll see you in the Writing Center because we'd love to help you with your paper, whether it's for a citation, question, or general APA help, brainstorming, or reviewing your rough draft. We're always here for you, no matter what the writing assignment. And there's also several tutors, and you can maybe look at their bios that write in APA most of the time. So hopefully they can help you out a little bit better. So good luck this semester, and I hope everything's going well.